And good morning and welcome. This is Boles.tv. I'm David Boles. And nice to be back with you at the start of a new week. This might be the start of week 8, I'm not sure. By the end of the week, we might be just broadcasting 2 months. It will be an interesting conversation to have. Once I check our calendar and calculate and see where we are in the world. But for now, we're here. It's morning on the East Coast, 9 a.m. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a good day, afternoon, evening. Strange weather, sunny skies, 50 degrees. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. But for now, we'll just kind of review what happened over the weekend with our brand new show, starring the lovely and talented Jana Marie. Now, I tell you, this music is driving me just a little mad. This is supposed to be kind of quiet meditation music, but in some ways it's just annoying me. So I'm going to see if I can pick something else. And we'll see where this takes us. Yes. Okay, let's just try it this way. And we'll see if this is not as obtrusive as we wonder. Okay. I thought I had this all set up, but that's the beauty and the absolute terror of live stream. But here we go. We find out things, we have fun together. A little Broadway-ish, but I don't mind that. Just as long as I'm not fighting the intention. Yeah, the music is meditation music, which I really liked, listening to it. But talking over it makes me feel like I shouldn't be talking. I should be quiet and meditate. This is Get Up and Dance. So over the weekend, Jana debuted her new show, Live ASL Chat with Jana Marie. And it was terrific, fun. She did a wonderful job. Wonderful guests. Dora was there. Kathy Husker was there. And each day we finish streaming the show, we sit down, we talk about what happened, things that worked, things that didn't work. I do the same thing with my show. And we realized maybe we want to change the title of her weekend show that she's doing right now on Saturdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern for about an hour. On Saturday she went an hour, on Sunday she went an hour and a half. It was just great. So we're changing the title of her thing to Ask a Deaf Person. Now, I like that a lot. I think that's exactly what she was sort of doing in day 2 of her stream. She was answering questions that people had about disability and deafness and finding careers and jobs, and she can comment on the news and give her personal opinion and her thank you for the follow and her take on what's going on in the world of disability and mainstreaming and education. It is just going to be delightful. So that's the new title of her stream on the weekend. Same person, same intention, just a different title to try to be more descriptive and more universal. Jana Sweeney, Ask a Deaf Person. That'll be a lot of fun. And if you have questions for her, you can send them to me at David Boles on Twitter. You can put something here in chat, say hello, whatever you want to do. So now we're going to have a special treat. We're going to do a little bit of a holiday edition of this Boles.tv live stream. Last week I showed you some wonderful Christmas videos that Jana took from the Oculus at the World Trade Center, and some videos from Journal Square and Washington Square Park that she took of Christmas trees. They're just delightful. And she has another video that she shared of the Washington Square Christmas tree. Not a holiday tree, it's a Christmas tree. That she took at night with the lights on this time. Wonderful stuff. I'm going to show that to you right now. And those were the sounds and the sights of the street in Washington Square Park on Friday. And I gotta tell you, a lot of skateboarding going on there. That whole beautiful video was taken over by the sound of skateboarding. Smashing skateboarding. And that is part now of the sound of the city of New York City. And I don't believe skateboards are allowed in Washington Square Park, but that doesn't mean they're not going to show up. And they're not allowed on sidewalks, and they're everywhere. So you really have to watch your back when you're walking in the park or on the street, because there's always someone on wheels behind you. Could be a scooter, probably a skateboard. So I love Janet's cinematography. It's very beautiful and encompassing and very delightful. And on her stream, she got into a conversation with our friend Dora. And Dora was saying she injured her knee, but she is okay, and she put up her Christmas stuff even though she probably shouldn't. And I said, hey, why don't you send us some photographs? And she did. And so now that's what we're going to go look at right now. We're going to look at Dora's decorations. This is what she sent me on Twitter. Here's my mantelpiece. This explains what's going on. Her words are better than mine. And bay window as this AM, this last night. Due to the sun's glare, I can't get a good shot of the tree this morning. The left side string of lights stopped working, but I moved them, so I'll be taking another shot later tonight. And you know, I'll be posting on Twitter as well. And she did. She posted more photographs, images on Twitter, and they look very beautiful. Maybe you can start a segment. Hey, viewers' Christmas trees. Now, wouldn't that be fun? As I mentioned, I saw a Christmas tree in a bag idea on the internet, so she tried it. My tree is pretty small. I folded the tree limbs, took 2 wide garbage bags, one on the bottom, one on the top, and I walk it to my basement. Unfortunately, the lights went out this year. I happen to have a shrub cover and used that. Other than trying to hide the bulky wires, it works beautifully. Have a great day. So, through the magic of the internet, we go into Dora's lovely home. And this is her setup. It's very beautiful. Love the lights. Now, Jana looked at this on the right side. She wondered, what is that stuff on the right side in the potted plant thing? She thought they looked like teddy bears. So we asked Dora, and she told us. And she sent us this photograph later that day. And the things in the potted plant are pears. A partridge in a pear tree. Isn't that beautiful? Here's another photograph. Dora's lovely place. Smiling, happy people. Very happy. This is her mantle. Quite delicious. Love her artwork. Can't get enough of that. Display it all. Have fun. The spirit of the times. So there you go. That's how we spent our weekend. Celebrating Christmas, the holiday, decorations, celebrating our friends celebrating us, and we can do it all virtually and online. And that's how we know and love Dora. Virtually, via this live stream and via Jana's live stream. And Twitter, of course. We're good friends on Twitter. And she has a wonderful Instagram. Wonderful artist. And that's okay. That's the way of the new world. Well, you don't get together, so you're not friends. You don't see each other in person, so you might think you're friends, but that's not what a real friend is. You've met people like that, right? Very negative. I always have the philosophy, if you know me and I know you, we're friends. I say friends in the past, growing up, who would come up and make a formal announcement, I want to be your friend. And that always threw me off a little bit, because I'm a strange person and rather disconnected in many ways, as my friends and associates and intimate family members will tell you. I just thought, if we're here and we're working on something together, or we're in the same room, or we're in the same classroom, why are we just not friends by default? Why do we have to ask to be a friend? Why do we need permission to be friends? I grant you my friendship. I accept your offer of friendship. But I know some people think that way, and that's okay. I just don't think that way. And then there are people who will try to say, well, you said you're my friend. And they try to take advantage of the fact that you believe that if you know someone and you're friendly with them, that you're a friend. And they try to ask you to do things and make you do things, but when you get old, you don't care about any of that anymore. You don't like people trying to push you around and redefine your friendship. Is a friend an acquaintance? Is an acquaintance a friend? I don't know. What's the difference? It's all the same to me. Everybody be happy together. What else is going on in the world? Well, I read this and just thought it was fascinating. And I said, well, let's see what happens on the live stream when we chat about this. And I love when one thing leads to an unexpected other. What does this mean? I don't know. We invented Viagra to clear our nasal passages, whatever, and look what it does down there. It gives men erections who couldn't have an erection before. Wow, we didn't mean that to happen, but that's what happened. I love when that happens. And now we have something else that has been discovered sort of by mistake that's on the brink of a miracle? I don't know. Asthma may reduce the risk of brain tumors. From Washington University in St. Louis. What does that mean? How is that possible? I don't know. Let's find out. There's not much good that can be said about asthma, a breathing disease in which the airways become narrow and inflamed. But there's this. People with asthma seem to be less likely to develop brain tumors than others. And now, researchers at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis believe they know why. Why? Tell me more. Well, it comes down to the behavior of T cells. And if you know anything about T cells, you know anything about HIV and AIDS, T cells are like the lock and key to the human body. It's the behavior of T cells, a type of immune cell. When a person or a mouse develops asthma, their T cells become activated. In a new mouse study, researchers discovered that asthma causes the T cells to behave in a way that induces lung inflammation, but prevents the growth of brain tumors. How would you study that? You're studying asthma and you're looking at lungs. And you say, well, let's go up and look at that brain tumor, see what's going on with that while we're doing this asthma study. Fascinating. I'm glad they looked. What's bad news for the airways may be good news for the brain. The idea that people with inflammatory diseases such as asthma or eczema, skin disease, are less prone to developing brain tumors was first proposed more than 15 years ago. I did not know that. I'm an old person. This is new to me today. Based on epidemiologic observations. But there was no obvious reason why the two very different kinds of diseases would be linked, and some scientists questioned whether the association was real or not. Now, nobody wants their diseases questioned, or maybe not even linked. Gutman is an expert in neurofibromatosis, NF, a set of complex genetic disorders that cause tumors to grow on nerves in the brain and throughout the body. Children with NF type 1 can develop a kind of brain tumor known as an optic pathway glioma. These tumors grow within the optic nerves, which carries messages between the eyes and the brain. Gutman, the director, noticed an inverse association between asthma and brain tumors among his patients more than 5 years ago, but he didn't know what to make of it. It wasn't until more recent studies from his lab began to reveal the crucial role that immune cells play in the development of optic pathway gliomas that he began to wonder whether immune cells could account for the association between asthma and brain tumors. Shocking, world-shattering stuff. And we're the beneficiary of that kind of wondering. And that's a good doctor who says, look, I'm seeing this happen. I wonder why it's happening when it shouldn't be happening. Let's try to figure this out. The most exciting part of this all is that it shows there is a normal communication between T cells in the body and the cells in the brain that support optic pathway glioma formation and growth. The next step is for us to see whether this is also true for other kinds of brain tumors. We're also investigating the role of eczema in early childhood infections because they both involve T cells. As we understand this communication between T cells and cells that promote brain tumors better, we'll start finding more opportunities to develop clever therapeutics to intervene in the process. Wow. It's both mind-bending and brain-shattering. Fantastic, fantastic news. And now in a similar vein, let's take a look at news from Arizona State University asking about the weather and storms and how a lack of snowfall is affecting drought, water supply, and tourism in the West. Now, that's an interesting topic because I have said for at least the last 15 years, living on the East Coast, where is the snow? For 2 or 3 years, we really haven't had a lot of heavy, blustery, wintry snow until like after January. And growing up in the Midwest, in Nebraska, which is kind of in a depression, a bowl, sort of, where all the bad weather gets bunched up in the Rockies and kind of just sits over Nebraska. So we would have some really heavy, nasty weather, sometimes as early as September. October, always, certainly, you had snow in the Midwest. And I know because I was out there shoveling it. And then you move eastward, and you have snow and slush, and it's awful. And then as the years go by, and as people say, global warming, climate change, whatever, you talk about the specifics of what's going on in your neighborhood, which is very dangerous when you're talking about something that's affecting the entire world. But if you're being attentive, and you notice there's no snowfall for most of the winter, it's a very bizarre thing to try to figure out. What's going on? Where is the snow? Why is there no water falling from the sky? And, of course, we know the answer is the world's getting warmer. So here's this cool study I want to share with you. Blizzards in Hawaii, no snow in the Colorado Rockies, crickets in Ketchum, Idaho. What is going on with the West? Some say climate change has affected this year's winter in the western region of the country, while others are wondering what the lack of snowpack might mean for the regional water supply, which is also in a precarious state. And if you look at Utah and Arizona, California, they don't have any water. They're in trouble. So what's going on in the West and the Southwest? Well, as a climatologist, I consider the context of weather patterns, for example, Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea on the Big Island of Hawaii are each well over 13,000 feet in elevation and receive snow every year. A blizzard is not an unusual weather situation for the peaks, but it would be unusual if a blizzard happened on Waikiki Beach. Blizzards and flooding in Hawaii are often experienced during a low-pressure system called the Kona Low that usually sets up between October and April. A similar setup happened December 1 through 7, 2007, with flooding, power outages, and blizzard warnings on the Big Island of Hawaii. Okay, that doesn't sound good either. How do we know the impacts of a drier season in Arizona? How does this affect places like Ketchum, Idaho? Well, it's all affected. Here's the answer. While La Nina tends to make Arizona's winter warmer and drier, it can also often help mitigate drought in the Pacific Northwest. Overall drought in the western U.S. was exceptional in 2021. Warmer and drier conditions stress vegetation in forests, making them susceptible to infestation and wildfire. Arizona's been in a drought since 2000, affecting 75% of our state. What is going on? Well, here's what's going on. Some years are wetter than others, but the overall trend since the 1990s has been below average statewide precipitation. Drought is assessed on both short-term and long-term timescales, and there are different types of drought. What do people need to understand about this, about the climate? Things they might not want to know. Everyone is continuously surrounded by weather and climate. And I think it is helpful to understand how these processes operate. I talk to community groups at all ages and levels, and one of the ideas I like to explain is how our hottest temperatures don't usually happen until later in the afternoon, even though the sun is the highest around noon. And what about the Colorado Rocky ski towns? What's going on with them? A lack of snow? Thank you for the follow. A lack of snow this time of year can do two things. It can delay the early start of tourism centered around skiing or snowboarding, or it can cause concern among prospective travelers who may reconsider booking travel later. At this moment, it can essentially delay the entire season. So weather affects commerce. Now that's how things are going to start to change with this global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it. When people can't ski at a snow resort because it's too hot, things are going to change. Estimates and sources like Power Magazine mention that a lack of snow in a given wintry tourism season can see ski towns experience revenue losses of $1 billion. Bad for business. Warm weather, bad for business. And a loss of more than 17,000 jobs. It is difficult to place a specific dollar amount, but let's try to break it down. So let's say a couple, a family, or a group of friends are paying $800 to $300 or more a night in accommodation, hotel rooms. You can easily spend $50 on lunch for two, and more than that for dinner. People stop, buy souvenirs. They want T-shirts. That's $120. So restaurants, hotels, shops, highly dependent on the season, on the snow, for business income and to be able to keep employees regularly employed. Then there are lift tickets that people pay, which are more than $100, and the repair of equipment. So if there's no snow, there's no skiing, and people are going to have a hard time. Mountains are an incredible resource for a destination, and without snow, and destination marketers in collaboration with businesses and investors can consider spas and natural healing retreats, or cultural or musical events and festivals. The scenery and aesthetics of mountain settings supplemented by alternative tourism activities represent creative ways for destinations to attract viewers, visitors, and also maintain jobs to diversify the economy. So there you go. That's what's happening. Excuse me. The weather, the drought, the lack of snow, the lack of rain trickles down in an economy in not a great way. It affects business, it affects snow, it affects water sports. It's something that needs to be considered and worked on and fixed. And it's only going to happen when the businesses stand up and say to the government, we need help. We need more than just playing people against each other. And with that, we're taking a very short break. I'll see you in a moment. And we are back. David Boles here with you on Boles.tv. Well, now we're going to dig into a very, very interesting topic. Something that I've been wondering about and thinking on and investigating for many years now. Not that it means anything. It's called NIL, which to me has always translated to name in likeness. But it really means name, image, and likeness. And it's a ridiculous, ridiculous thing that I'm going to share with you now. And it has to do with student athletes who play sports, usually football, for major universities, and they want to be paid for the work they do. And for many, many, many years, there was always a threat, an existential threat to the university, where students wanted to unionize and have a collective bargaining agreement with the NCAA and with their schools, and they would be paid a minimum amount of money. And the schools did not want that. And the NCAA did not want that. Some people in government thought that was a good idea, but very few. And the NCAA didn't want that because the NCAA sets all the rules for what's an amateur and what's not an amateur, so they're usurping all of their authority by unionizing, because then the union is in charge of what goes and what doesn't go. So the NCAA didn't want that. The university did not want students unionizing because then they would have to consider them employees and pay them and protect them and give them benefits and access to health care. They didn't want that. So for many years and many generations, these young superstars would play for these college football teams, the farm team for the NFL, if you will. And there was risk of injury, and some of them would take out insurance policies in case they were critically injured in their college careers and could not go on to the NFL. So you have a knee that will never heal, you get your $1 million and then you walk away. You were hoping for $10 million at the NFL, but you'll settle for $1 million. And the kids kept pushing and saying, why does the university get to sell my jersey, let's say number 12, my football jersey, for $200 on their website, and people are buying it and putting my name on the back of that jersey? I'm a student athlete, and I don't get paid for that. Now, why is that fair? Why does the university get to take all of that money from me? And the university and the NCAA historically said, oh, well, look at all these benefits you get. You get free tuition. You get free meals. You can go to the training table and eat all you want. You get a dorm room. What are you complaining about? Well, if you go to a state school, that's, what? $20,000 a year, maybe, benefits. Now, if you're at a private school like Yale or Harvard, That's probably worth $80,000 a year. And the NCAA had hard rules on what a freshman was and what a redshirt was, and if you could have a medical exemption to come back for another year. It was suffocating. These rules from the NCAA trying to control the lives of generally minority black men playing college football. Now this goes on out into women's volleyball and maybe women's basketball, but we're generally talking the big money of college football. So the students, as they aged, and some of them would hire agents with the idea of, well, I'm getting ready to go to the NFL, so I'm allowed to have an agent. The NCAA didn't like that. The schools didn't like that. Schools didn't want agents on the school grounds, and the agents were paying these players, these superstar players, under the table, saying, look, I'm going to pay you now. I'm going to pay you $10,000 a semester. And then when you graduate, you sign with me as your agent. I take 10% of your $10 million contract. And a lot of these kids who would come from poor families and needed to support their families, and their mothers would say, okay, I'll take that deal. And some people got found out and some people didn't. Then there were the insider jobs where a booster would say, well, I own this used car lot over here. You star football player, why don't you come and work for me? I'll put you on commission. And I'll pay you $10,000 a semester to not have an agent and to just stay in school. And I'm not bribing you. I'm supporting you by giving you a job that just happens to pay $1,000 an hour, whatever. And that was untenable too. In some schools and some people got in trouble, but a lot of people looked the other way. And who can blame the athletes from saying, look, I don't know how long my career is going to be. An NFL career is what, averages 4 years? I think the average is 4 years, 4 or 5 years for everybody. That's not a lot of time to make money. Baseball players can play for 10, 15 years. Basketball players can play for 10, 15 years. Football players get hurt very quickly. So there was this rising tide, this fomented anger in these student athletes who each year and each generation would get smarter and quicker. And the NCAA could say, what are we supposed to do? And kids said, well, we're going to band together and go take you to court so we can unionize and get protected. And the NCAA and the school said, oh my gosh, don't go to court. That would be terrible. Because we're not going to win. You're going to win. Because when you say that you're indentured slaves and indentured students, and we make $200,000 off each player, and we're only having to pay you $20,000 in dorm and tuition waivers, you'll win. So this is what happened. And it's the most ridiculous thing you're ever going to hear about. This NIL thing. Name and image I and likeness L. So what does that mean? Well, it now means that students can make deals without involving their schools or getting approval by the NCAA, where they can be hired as spokespeople, influencers, if you will, on Twitter and Instagram, and they can advertise stuff and people can pay them directly. Now, just saying that sounds so ridiculous and so dumb. And it is a little bit foolish for me to have to say it out loud. Because that is ripe for abuse and misuse. So, this name, image, and likeness. It's your name that we can put on a shirt, your likeness, your image. We can take a picture of you and sell it and have it. Your likeness, we can draw a cartoon of you, suggesting it's you, and you can sell it too. So this is the official, ridiculous NCAA website from June of this year. NCAA college athletes will have the opportunity to benefit from their own name, image, and likeness beginning on Thursday. Governance bodies in all three divisions today adopted a uniform interim policy suspending NCAA name, image, and likeness rules for all incoming and current student athletes in all sports. This is where it gets really interesting. The new policy provides the following guidelines to college athletes, recruits, their families, and their member schools. Individuals can engage in NIL activities that are consistent with the law of the state where the school is located. Now that's interesting. Texas plays by different rules than the rest of the states. We'll talk about that in a minute. Colleges and universities may be a resource for state law questions. College athletes who attend a school in a state without an NIL law can engage in this type of activity without violating NCAA rules related to name, image, and likeness. Individuals can use a professional services provider for NIL activities. That's an agent. Student athletes should report NIL activities consistent with state law or school to another school. So this is NCAA raising the white flag saying, okay, students, you win. You're the money makers. You are the stars. We have to retain some kind of semblance that we have any kind of law and order, but go out and get an agent, and you and your family members can sell your name, image, and likeness as you wish. That's what it means. NCAA official page. Questions and answers on name, image, and likeness. What about guardrails for future name, image, and likeness activities for student athletes? The Board of Governors is requiring guardrails around any future name, image, and likeness activities. These would include no such activities that are pay for play or have any school or conference involvement. No use of name, image, and likeness for recruiting by schools or boosters, and regulation of agents and advisors. Okay, it means absolutely nothing, as now you're going to see. So that's the NCAA. Then you have the schools. Then you have people who work for the schools as athletic directors who have to now deal with this ridiculous name, image, and likeness thing that's a big sham to pay student athletes without considering them employees. So they asked athletic directors at major universities, what do you think? Do you think allowing student athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness could reduce compensation for coaches and administrators? No, 59%. Maybe, 34%. Yes, 6%. We'll see about that. Would you support a market-based licensing environment where individual student athletes are free to monetize their NIL rights and earn varying amounts of compensation? Do you support that idea? 48% no. 28% maybe. 22% yes. If a group licensing program were created to distribute compensation derived from the use of student athletes' name, images, and likeness, which model do you prefer? All student athletes across Division I receive the same amount, 12%. All student athletes in a school receive the same amount, but the amount can vary between schools, 2%. Already, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. All football and men's basketball student athletes at a school receive the same amount. Student athletes in other sports at the school receive a lesser but standard amount. Amounts can vary between schools, 2%. Now, see, this is a big issue because football, especially, let's say, at the University of Nebraska, pays for all the other athletic competitions and athletes. Football brings in the money, and then the money is distributed out to the rest of the athletic department. So football rules the home game and rules the roost at the university. All student athletes in a conference receive the same amount, but amounts can vary by conferences, 6%. So that's the question. Does a football player who brings in more money for the university get more money than, let's say, a men's wrestler? Now, if you believe in big business, the business that brings in the more money gets students who get paid more. But if you believe in equality, and Title IX, then everybody should be paid the same amount if you're a student athlete. All football and men's basketball student athletes in a conference receive the same amount. Other students, athletes in the same conference receive a lesser amount. Amounts could vary between conferences, 6%. 71% of athletic directors don't like any of those ideas. They don't want to deal with it because it's an impossible sticky wicket from which there is no escape. If a group licensing program were created, should student athletes be able to opt out of the group, regardless of your preferred model? No, 51% say. Keep them all locked up. In a market-based licensing environment, where individual student athletes are able to monetize their name, image, and likeness rights, should student athletes be permitted to retain an agent to assist in their efforts? 41%. No! Of course not. The athletic directors want to maintain control of their athletes. They don't want get calls from agents saying the quarterback wants 10% more than the defensive back, which is going to happen and is already happening. The process of gathering NIL rights to student athletes is moving too slow, 20%, at the right pace, 42%, too fast, 36%. I think we know the answer is way too fast. So there you go. That's from the athletic directors. Now let's ratchet in and focus just a little bit more. Historically, this is Senator Ernie Chambers from Nebraska, represents Omaha. Was in the legislature, the unicameral, for many, 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 many years, ran unopposed, could not be beaten in Omaha. So what did they do? The only black guy in the whole unicameral, and he would wear short-sleeve muscle shirts, and he had big muscles when he was young. And he was wild, and you could not tame him because he was Ernie Chambers. What do you do with a guy like that? Well, you term limit him. And that's exactly what the legislature did. They got rid of Ernie Chambers. But the law was written in such a way that once he served 2 terms or whatever it was, he could leave and then come back and serve 2 terms and then leave and come back. And that's exactly what's happened. Ernie Chambers is still in Nebraska unicameral. And here he is in May of '83. So at least since '83, Ernie Chambers has been trying to stand up for these minority students who play for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And for many, many generations, the tasteless joke on campus was the only black people in the school are on the football team. And unfortunately, that terrible truth was actually a fact. So here he is, dressed as a Nebraska player, saying that these students should be employees of the university. Never went anywhere. Outrage. Who does Ernie Chambers think he is to tell us what to do with our money? Well, he was proved right. He says it's only a matter of time before universities pay athletes, and he's making headway into all of this. And this was written in August of this year, so Ernie is still around. Ernie Chambers has campaigned for decades for student athletes in high-profile college sports to receive compensation and protection, whether or not it is sanctioned by the NCAA. Big-time football is big business par excellence, whose only reason for being is revenue generation, Ernie Chambers said in a 1981 column in the New York Times. There is no God but football, and coach is in its profits, and profit is the prophet's business. Won-loss records are the balance sheet. Ernie Chambers saw exploitation and under the table yet obvious moves to circumvent rules and compensate athletes who were learning all the wrong lessons. The players who labor in hazardous occupation and produce huge revenue should be paid like any other students are paid for campus jobs. Who can argue with that? Oh boy, a lot of people argue with Ernie Chambers about that. In the early days, Ernie Chambers said he was laughed and mocked. But in the ensuing years, public perception and national momentum has shifted in his direction. Most recently with the NCAA's decision to allow athletes to pursue compensation for their NIL, name, image, and likeness. Pressure was mounting from state legislatures that passed measures to allow the same. Those states included Nebraska, where the legislature passed a bill introduced by another Omaha senator who says her work on the issue is not over. Chambers, who left the state legislature for the second time last year because of term limits, remembers those who ridiculed or supported him and his ideas, and he has receipts. So now we step forward into the future, into the absolute specifics of name, image, and likeness. And let's look at one particular athlete at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And we're not outing anybody. This is there. This is part of it. Hello, Dora. Nice to have you with us today. So in July, top NCAA athlete Lexi Sun becomes one of the first NCAA athletes to sign an apparel deal. In response to the College Athlete Economic Freedom Act, Lexi Sun partners with volleyball apparel company Ren Athletics to design her very own crew neck sweatshirt. Name and likeness. Name, image, and likeness. Today, July 1st, the state of Nebraska announced its new state legislation in which it makes it possible for collegiate athletes to profit off their name, image, and likeness. In response to this new act, Lexi Sun, All-American volleyball player, becomes one of the very first collegiate athletes to release her own personal apparel line. Well, isn't that lovely? And isn't that interesting? And is that the way it should be? Are all athletes created equal? Not really. Because not everyone on the women's volleyball team has a deal like that. Why does Lexi Sun get a deal like that? Well, why do you think? This is Lexi Sun's Instagram. And maybe you can start seeing for yourself why Lexi Sun is making these deals. Lexi Sun has personality. She's quite lovely. She's a winner. She is a leader. She first played at Texas and didn't like it at Texas, and she came to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and had some wild success. Lexi Sun is beautiful. Lexi Sun is smart. Lexi Sun is likable. Lexi Sun has a fantastic name. And when this all first started, there was this big joke rumor thing that Lexi Sun would be the new spokesmodel for Capri Sun. Lexi Sun, Capri Sun. She has the perfect name. This must be part of her clothing line. See the little logo there? That's what I'm wondering. I don't know. I don't really follow her. I just found her for you for the topics of this conversation. So this is all very natural. Wonderful, natural images from Lexi Sun. But wait, there's more. From August of this year, Borsheim's big Warren Buffett owned, at least at one time, jewelry store, international jewelry store located in Omaha, Nebraska. Well, look at this. Borsheim's has an announcement. We are thrilled to announce our partnership with University of Nebraska-Lincoln volleyball star Lexi Sun and introduce the Lexi Sun Edit, a stunning selection of simple, chic jewelry to incorporate into your everyday style. Learn more by visiting this website. And there is Lexi Sun, I guess, modeling her Borsheim's jewelry. So Lexi Sun is making bank off her name, image, and likeness. Is there a little bit of jealousy from the football team? From the women's basketball team? from her cohorts on the women's volleyball team? I don't know, but you know human nature. And here are the comments. Oh, $25,000 affordable to me. And it goes on and on. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. I don't know if you know what a runza is. Runza, born, bred, manufactured in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's like a hamburger, onions, wrapped in a bun, sealed, baked. That's a runza. Then you cut it open and you put cheese in, or jalapeno, or mozzarella, pizza sauce, and make it a pizza runza or a cheese runza. Famous. They're called protein bars in Nebraska. So this is both sad and a little bizarre that Runza Restaurants made a historic announcement on Wednesday. This is in June of this year, saying they will offer endorsement deals to Nebraska area college athletes. Well, isn't that interesting? Starting Thursday, July 1st, Runza's marketing director says the company will pitch the deal to the first 100 athletes who opt in to Open Doors Deals platform. This is a new and exciting era of college sports. Runza has a long history of partnering with area colleges and universities for athletic sponsorships, and now changes to the name, image, and likeness policy allow our brand to directly support student athletes. With Open Doors, we're able to connect with these athletes and operate the campaign from pitch to payment in one compliant platform, making it scalable for us and simple for the student athlete. Now, we don't know anything more about this because no one's talking, but I think these deals have to be reported to the university. But the big joke is that they signed a lot of big fat guys on the football team, the offensive line, and either paid them or gave them free runzas or something. And these guys, who, as Keith Jackson used to call the big uglies, don't look like Lexi's son, and they're probably not going to get a jewelry deal from Borsheim's and all. So what are they going to do? You're a big dumb fat guy? And I mean dumb affectionately. I'm dumb. You're going to take a runza deal where you get $100 and 10 free runzas, or whatever they're offering, because that's all that's going to be offered to you. And now this came out this week. Welcome to the dirty side of name, image, and likeness. Oh boy. And all of this was predicted the day it was announced. And it makes the NCAA look really, really ridiculous. It has been a rough year for companies sponsoring college athletes on the new Name, Image, and Likeness program. Almost every player who cashed in on it didn't live up to expectations. And they named some athletes. The poster child was Quinn. Was it Evers? I can't see, I'm old. Not being able to cash in as a high school quarterback in Texas. Ewers left early to go to Ohio State and promptly signed a reported $1.4 million deal with an autograph guy. Let's hope he didn't sign any Ohio State helmets. After just 4 months and 2 snaps as quarterback, he returned to the transfer portal, likely to go back to Texas to play his college ball there. So he was paid $1.4 million. Does he have to pay it back? I don't think so. This is where the charade gets more pronounced, with the relationship between boosters and athletes suddenly open, allowed, and encouraged by the NCAA. Promising a quid pro quo deal is easier than ever. What a genius idea. Have a slush fund that masquerades as a charity to stunt blowback, but never have any pressure by any company because the return on investment won't be tracked. The first initiative is called the Pancake Factory, which will give $50,000 to every Texas offensive lineman on scholarship. Now, how many schools can afford to get boosters together to pool their money like that into what appears to be a fake charity to pay offensive linemen, and I don't know if they're just starters or backups or everybody on the team, $50,000 each just for putting on the Texas uniform? A few schools could probably compete on that level, but not all of them. With that announcement, every lineman, none of whom are likely to be marketable at all, who is thinking about going to Texas, now knows that $50,000 is coming to you from that program. If you just sign the letter of intent, you can go to Texas, be on the offensive line, and we'll pay you $50,000. It's never talked about directly. And linemen are perfect for this kind of setup. They are worth the $50,000 because of their roles on the field are essential. And they're not marketable. They don't look like Lexi Sun. The hilarious part, of course, is that no one cares about their name, image, and likeness, right? That money's not being spent for them and their marketability. That money is being sent to have them work in the pits on the front line. Since this talk of compensation began, the fear was that boosters might one day offer to buy thousands of jerseys or have a player sign hundreds of autographs, $1.4 million worth, to get them to a school. And with name, image, and likeness, it's much easier to do that today. You don't even have to pretend that's what you're doing. So that's where we are. Where the big schools like Texas can drum up all this money and create all these fakeries and get away with it. But it doesn't stop there. Michigan State, football, basketball players, not the wrestling team, not the dive team, not the soccer team, not the rugby team. No. Football and basketball players will get $500 a month in a stipend in a new NIL deal. Ishiba and his company, United Wholesale Mortgage, will be providing $500 stipends to all football and basketball players at Michigan State for the 2021-22 school year, according to a Wednesday morning announcement from the company. That will cost a total of $6,000 apiece over the course of the next year for the 133 Spartan players who on the two teams for a total commitment of nearly $800,000. So you go there, you get paid $6,000? Okay. And the arrangement's allowed under the NCAA rules after the association began allowing players to profit off their name, image, and likeness starting in July. So there you go. Go to Michigan State, get $500. But if you're a big fat ugly, you can go to Texas and you can get $50,000. What school would you choose? Most people would probably choose to be Lexi Sun and be the representative for Borsheims, if you know what I mean. There's money in the diamonds. And here we go, female athletes who have cashed in on NIL deals. Has it made them better athletes? No. But here you go. Now, we looked at the Lexi Sun Instagram, right? Polished, professional, interesting, humble. Here are some other people, other women, student athletes, getting NIL money. On the streets, holding up money in shorts in New York City. There she is. Part of the announcement, Lexi Sun. Showing off her diamonds. Or whatever it is. From Borsheim's. Oh, shouldn't hit that. Oh, that takes us back to Lexington. We don't want that. Some video that I won't play. Here we go. Somebody's getting free Chipotle, I guess. You're a spokesman for Chipotle and its name and likeness. Okay. Now this is interesting. Are student athletes about their bodies, their intellect, or about showing off their new pantsuit as part of their NIL, name, image, and likeness agreement with these private companies? Well, the evidence is in the eyes. You see it, you know what's going on. UCLA commitment, promoting Spalding sports, that makes sense, sort of. Breaking limits, degree, so that's where we are. In this big mess of name, image, and likeness. It sort of takes the fun and the taste out of these college sports, but we were always going there. Ernie Chambers, if you're a Nebraska fan, has been telling us for 30 years this cannot go on. We cannot sustain these student athletes who are indentured servants to a university just because they sign a letter of intent. And now there's a transfer portal where they can say, you know, I've had enough of you. I'm putting my name in. I'm going to another school and you can't stop me, which I think is really, really good. Because it didn't used to be that way. It used to be if you signed a letter of intent, you had to stay for 4 years. Then they changed it that you could go, but you couldn't go into the same conference. Then they changed it, well, you could go, leave, and go to the same conference if your coach agrees. And if your coach didn't like you, your coach could say, you can go, but you can't go to the same conference. You can't go across the street, across the state lines to our rival and play for them, not after I paid for you for 2 years. And then they said, well, you can go across the state, but you have to sit out a year. You won't lose any eligibility, but you can't play right away. You have to be punished for changing your mind. So all that's done. That's gone. That's good. Students can go play where they want to play. And that's affected recruiting in many ways. Students now don't have to worry about being recruited or making the wrong decision. You can go and get $1.4 million by saying they're going to play for Ohio State and then go back to Texas and get more money. You're not stuck to a school. And a school is not stuck to you. A school could say, look, you're not playing well enough. We're not taking away your scholarship, but maybe you want to go explore the portal and see if someone will take you. So this is just the beginning of a big stinky mess in name, image, and likeness that is going to haunt college sports for the next generation or two, until I think these students are just allowed to be free agents and go wherever they want and play whatever they want and get paid for whatever they want. I don't know what other recommendation can fall, because the NCAA has no reason for being if not to enforce silly rules that they invent and that they force schools and athletes to abide. And with that, my friend, we're going to take a very brief blood pressure break, and I will see you again momentarily. We are back from break. Thank you very much for being here on Boles.tv live. I'm David Boles. It's nice to have you today. Having interesting conversation about student athletes. And now we're going to take a little bit of a bend and a turn in a different direction. When I was a student at the Columbia University School of the Arts, the Oscar Hammerstein II Center for the study of theater arts, I was introduced to a book called The Empty Space that Howard Stein, my delightful friend and mentor, recommended to me. And this book, The Empty Space, was written in 1968 by a super genius named Peter Brook. And when you're in school, you discover touchstones and cornices that stay with you for what you hope is the remainder of your life. And The Empty Space is one such book that I'm going to share with you right now. Why I found it important and how it influences my life beyond just the theater. This is Peter Brook. Still alive! at the age of 96. He's English. He's been based in France since the 1970s. He has won multiple Tony and Emmy Awards, an Olivier Award, and has been called our greatest living theater director. And when he was with the Royal Shakespeare Company, he directed the first English language production of Marat Sade in 1964. That show transferred to Broadway in 1965 and won all sorts of awards. So, Peter Brook is a genius. And when he wrote this book, The Empty Space, a lot of his peers ostracized him and criticized the book. They hated the book, and I'll show you why. Peter Brook divides the theater, the live stage, into three ideas: the deadly theater, the holy theater, the rough theater, and the immediate theater. And that's what he talks about for about 150 pages. He starts with the deadly theater. I can take any empty space and call it a bare stage. A man walks across this empty space while someone else is watching him, and this is all that is needed for an act of theater to be engaged. Yet when we talk about the theater, this is not quite what we mean. Red curtains, spotlights, blank verse, laughter, darkness. These are all confusedly superimposed into a messy image covered by one all-purpose word. We talk of the cinema killing the theater, and in that phrase we refer to the theater as it was when the cinema was born. A theater of box office, foyer, tip-up seats, footlights, scene changes, intervals, music, as though the theater was, by very definition, these and little more. Now, continuing on, this is where Peter Brook got into a lot of trouble. The condition of the deadly theater, at least, is fairly obvious. All through the world, theater audiences are dwindling. There are occasional new movements, good new writers, and so on, but as a whole, the theater not only fails to elevate or instruct, it hardly even entertains. And then at the very bottom of this paragraph, which I cannot highlight because I would not let me highlight two things on one page. Of course, nowhere does the deadly theater install itself so securely, so comfortably, and so slyly as in the works of William Shakespeare. What? William Shakespeare? He's the main theater guy. We put on a show with William Shakespeare, a Shakespeare play. We're doing the best theater ever. Not according to Peter Brook, who used to be the head of all Shakespeare in England. And he's saying this: the deadly theater takes easily to Shakespeare. We see his plays are done by good actors in what seems like the proper way. They look lively and colorful. There is music, and everyone is all dressed up just as they're supposed to be. But the idea is that theater, the deadly theater, is dead, not a living theater where people can associate with each other and bring new meaning to old works. They just take the play, they put up the play as it's always been done, they're done with the play, curtain down, everyone goes up, we saw Shakespeare this evening. Aren't we wonderful? We contribute music to the Shakespeare Festival. We've done it all. Thank you so much. So he takes a whole chapter knocking down the deadly theater. Then he goes into the holy theater. Now that's interesting. You start dead, and the next idea you have is holy, okay? I am calling it the Holy Theater for short, but it could be called the theater of the invisible made visible. The notion that the stage is a place where the invisible can appear has a deep hold on our thoughts. We are all aware that most of life escapes our senses. And see, this is why this book stays with you forever. You read it as a student, and you talk about it in class, and you talk about it privately with Howard Stein, and then you go back later when you're older and wiser and smarter, and you read that line. We are all aware that most of life escapes our senses, and it sort of rocks how you think. It affects how you deal with life. A most powerful explanation of the various arts is that they talk of patterns, which we can only begin to recognize when they manifest themselves as rhythms or shapes. Now, you could read that sentence and think about that sentence for 50 years and never really quite understand how deep that meaning goes. We observe that behavior of people, of crowds, of history, obeys such recurrent patterns. We hear that trumpets destroyed the walls of Jericho. We recognize that a magical thing called music can come from men in white ties and tails, blowing, waving, thumping, and scraping away. And of course, for 50 pages, Peter Brook talks about the Holy Theater and what it means and how you get there, and what it should mean to people who create theater. And there are too many of us who say, well, let's forget about what we're doing. Let's just put on a show and have some fun. And that's why a lot of theater has lost its immediacy. You used to go to the theater to get inspired, to go into the streets, to protest, to bring down a government. And now you go to the theater often to just forget about your life and have no relationship to what you're seeing on the stage and have it tremble within the life you live at home. Chapter 3 is the rough theater. It is always the popular theater that saves the day. Through the ages, it has taken many forms, and there is only one factor that they all have in common: a roughness. Salt, sweat, noise, smell. The theater that's not in a theater. The theater on carts, on wagons, on trestles. Audiences standing, drinking, sitting round tables. Audiences joining in, answering back. Theater in back rooms, upstairs rooms, barns. The one-night stands, the torn sheet pinned up across the hall, the battered screen to conceal the quick changes. That one generic term, theater, covers all this. And the sparkling chandeliers, too. So, he's not necessarily a fan of the Holy Theater. He's not necessarily a fan of this rough theater. But he understands what it is and what it means. And this idea of let's put on a show, or let's do stand-up comedy in the back room, or let's do dinner theater. Well, those are all kind of manifestations of what Peter Brook calls the rough theater. And we should be careful. If you're into trying to foment change in your life. And then after making those arguments of what the theater is but should not be, Peter Brook brings us to this final thought. The final chapter, chapter 4. The immediate theater. Again, you read this chapter and it affects your stasis in life and your status as a human being. There is no doubt that a theater can be a very special place. It is like a magnifying glass and also like a reducing lens. Two things, same time, opposite ideas in the same moment. It is a small world, so it can easily be a petty one. It is different from everyday life, so it can be easily be divorced from life. On the other hand, while we live less and less in villages or neighborhoods and more in open-ended global communities, the theater community stays the same. The cast of a play is still the size that it has always been. The theater narrows life down. It narrows it down in many ways. It is always hard for anyone to have one single aim in life. In the theater, however, the goal is clear. From the first rehearsal, the aim is always visible, not too far away, and it involves everyone. We can see many model social patterns at work. The pressure of a first night with its unmistakable demands produce that working together, that dedication, that energy, and that consideration of each other's needs, that government despair of ever invoking outside wars. So the immediate theater is a theater that surrounds you, that has meaning and purpose beyond just make-believe and putting on a show. The immediate theater is the theater of the mind, of the life, that we all try to live sanctimoniously together while pretending that we're not sanctimonious. That is the point and the issue of Peter Brook's The Immediate Theater. And the last little bit oh, we lost our music. Let me see what's going on. Okay, music is back. So this is how Peter Brook ends his tremendous book, The Empty Space. In the theater, the slate is wiped clean all the time. In everyday life, if is a fiction. In the theater, if is an experiment. In everyday life, if is an evasion. In the theater, if is the truth. When we are persuaded to believe in this truth, then the theater and life are one. This is a high aim. It sounds like hard work. To play needs much work. But when we experience the work as play, then it is not work anymore. A play is play. And that is the lovely drama and the lovely lesson of Peter Brook in The Empty Space. Now, when you read something like that, you try to, if you're being a thoughtful person, apply the ideas to other parts of your life and the world around you. So this isn't just a book about the empty space that is the theater. It's about life. It's about art. It's about education. It's about the human soul. It's about the human condition. And there are 4 parts of all of these things: deadly, holy, rough, and immediate. And only one of them is beneficial. The rest are very deep, threatening dangers. and how you spend your time. Life itself is deadly, wholly, rough, and immediate. And Peter Brook is trying to say the space, the empty space, the space in front of you, the space that surrounds your life can be immediate and of the moment and special and affecting other people around you. Or you can choose to be haphazard and rough and cruel. You can pretend to be above other people, pretend to be holy. Allow the deadliness of the dead spirit of what's come before you define you and surround you now. Even more simplistically, just think of building or buying and moving into a new space where you live. More dramatically, a house, a home. That is the ultimate empty space that you choose to decorate and create and improve and surround. And do you want that space to be a safe space, a predictable space, a dangerous space, a space that provides you warmth and love of friends and family and pets and other inspirations, like artwork or exercise or woodworking? These are all choices that you can make. And unfortunately, as Peter Brook warns us, too many people make the wrong decisions. They think they're going one way, and they're actually going in just the opposite. But the ultimate lesson of the empty space is this. Peter Brook is talking about the theater, but what he's really talking about is the mind. Your mind, the reader's mind. And that encompasses your joyful soul and your human condition. And then he asks you, without asking you, what kind of life do you want to have? Do you want one that is deadly and boring and predictable, and you are where you're from, and you are born, work, and live in the exact same neighborhood, in the exact same town, your entire life? Or do you chase fame and profits and proclaim yourself to be a deity or a follower or of ideas that don't belong to you? A propagator of indoctrination? Or do you choose to go another way with your life? Or you're imprisoned, or drinking too much, or stuck in depressive states from which you cannot escape? Or finally, do you want a life of the mind, where you're always in the moment? You are always of the instant. You are always searching for new things to learn and new ideas to try and new satisfactions to support while defeating the rough, the holy, and the deadly. So that's how one book, The Empty Space by Peter Brook, has affected my life for the last 30 years, and I've enjoyed every single minute of it. And now, because life is up and down, and life is twisted and corkscrewed around different corners and different angles, you know what time it is. No, it's not time for a blood pressure break. It's time for the humbling of a man. He's a lovely man. He's a timid man. He tries to be an immediate man, but he's not always successful. Thank you very much. Yes, it's time for me to put myself on the line. It's been a long, interesting stream, and now it's time to just go into the ugly and the deadly. Yes, this will be the ugly and the deadly theater as we know it. Not Bobby Fischer chess, but just regular David Boles chess. I'm not proud of it. I come here humbly. And we're going to try to play We're going to see if we can play on chess.com. Did we already play this? No. Crystal Ball says no. Okay, so here we are. This is where we humble ourselves and we try to remind ourselves that we are indeed human. We are not Bobby Fischer. We are not a god that walks the earth. We are merely a person who's trying to solve a puzzle. And we don't do very well with these. But that doesn't mean we're going to stop trying. We're going to keep trying. And today we're playing black on the chess.com puzzle of the day. Now this says squashing counterplay, which makes me wonder if this is not going to be a puzzle where you have to checkmate the king. Oh, Dora says her mind is always going. I hope that's a good thing. I hope it's going in the right direction. Because my mind right now is going in the wrong direction with this puzzle. Squashing counterplay. So that means it's a hint. Yes, Dora says. Counterplay means that white's going to do something to make me angry and block me, and I have to stop them from doing it. That sounds really mysterious. I will try. To figure this out. Counterplay suggests to me they're going to be attacking me, which doesn't make me very happy. Well, gosh, there just are not a lot of moves here. Well, I would start with this, with a rook. I like moving this rook here and putting that chain in jeopardy. But I know it's not right because I'm not good at these puzzles. No, it's not the right answer. So, it's not a rook move. At least not that rook move. It could be a different rook move. But because I'm getting frustrated already, I'm getting a hint. Ah, it's a bishop move. Now, I could go down here and click this again and say move it for me, but I never like to do that because that's cheating. Getting a hint is not cheating. Getting a hint is trying to get your head on straight. So it's a bishop move. Now, see, this is how I play, and I know it's not right because I do these puzzles. See, I was thinking about doing this with this bishop going down here and taking that pawn. Because it's an open pawn that you can take. But these puzzles don't like that. Because it's not proactive enough. So I don't think that's the move. Even though it wins me a piece. If I go here, the queen will take me. And then I guess I could take the queen. Oh, now that's interesting, actually. Yeah, that's actually interesting. I'm sure that's now the move. See, I got all nervous here because I have my intro where I'm not Bobby Fischer, and that's not the move. I'm not Bobby Fischer, and then the crowd cheers, and the crowd boos me. Yeah. So it's a bishop move. Now I could go here. And have the same effect. Oh, I moved it. I was thinking. Okay, so it was there. And then the rook moves to take my queen, but I can take their queen. Do we exchange queens? That's, I'm sure, the counterplay that they're discussing. Do I want that counterplay? Do I want to take the queen? And because I'm playing black, black usually wants to take the queen. So I'm going to take the queen. Just because I believe that is the right answer. Hi-ya! It was not the right answer. So I wonder if it's the queen takes the rook. That is the right answer, and now I lost my queen because the rook took my queen. But now I can take their queen. Counterplay. But I don't think it's my counterplay because I'm supposed to squash it. That was the right answer. And the puzzle is solved. But not a lot of joy in solving the puzzle. So now we have to go to our chessable page. And let's see, we finished a chapter over the weekend where we were trying to do better, and we started a new chapter. And the new chapter, the long lethal diagonal, which means queens and bishops, is not going well. Now these are 2 moves. And it's not going well. And these are timed. So I am black to play, and I have 2 moves to checkmate. And this is the long diagonal. That's what this chapter is focusing on. But I've learned that doesn't really mean anything because I get tricked. Because usually a knight is involved somehow. So my 2 long diagonals are my bishop and my queen. But that doesn't, I've learned over the weekend that doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't mean anything. So, now what do you do? Oh, I'm running out of time. I've got to make a decision. I don't know what to do. I'll go here. That's not right either. Okay, so now it's going to make me make the right move. So I have to move my queen to take the pawn, which is absolutely the right move, and then I'm going to be taken by the knight. See, they love it when you sacrifice your queen, and I have a hard time doing it. And I'm sure that's why they do these puzzles, because they make you do things you don't want to do, try to teach you to give up your queen. Sacrifice your queen, as they say. So now I have one more move to make and the puzzle's over. And I don't know what the move is. Oh, I do know what the move is. Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I have to have better board vision. So this rook goes down here, puts the king in check, and no one can touch the rook because the bishop, the long diagonal, protects the rook. Very simple puzzle. I made it very difficult. I learned 2 moves, and I got half of them wrong. Or I got half of them right. This is my rain sound. This is how I'm feeling. It's a rainy mood, even though it's a sunny sky outside. I'd better hurry. Black to play. The long diagonal. Black to play. Well, they like your sacrifice your queen. Queen moves here, puts the king in check. Rook takes. Rook takes. Artist, decisions. I guess I need to learn chess. You know, I'm learning Chinese, or was, but due to working on things, back burner. Yeah, I understand. I've been learning chess now after 44 years. I thought 3 months I'd be back in shape, I'd be learning online, and the more I study, the more I try to get caught up. The more I realize, oh, you have a long way to go. These kids are going to kill you. And they should. But I'm not ready to play yet because I know how awful I am. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate the support. And we showed all of your lovely photographs today at the start of the show. So make sure you go back and watch the video on demand to get the full effect of your complete delight. Yay! 2 new moves 100%. The rain helped. It distracted me. We'll do one more puzzle. Okay, white to move in 2 moves. 2 moves! I sort of prefer the puzzles that are 6 moves because I get to think a little bit better. This is a 2-move puzzle. White to play, white to play, white to play. On the long diagonal. Oh, this is hard. Oh, Dora's alarm didn't go off. I know that feeling. But you're here now, so that's good. And I'm running out of time. Let's see, I could go here, which I sort of like. And then that puts pressure here, which I sort of like. But it's not dramatic enough, I don't think. But I'll do it anyway. Not the right move. Alright, so I've been corrected. So it's a rook move. And then I get taken. Okay. And then... Oh. Now I can make my move, because when I take here, I think, then I'm immediately putting the king in check. But I had to sacrifice my rook first to get there, so the black pawn would take my rook this way. I bet that's what's going on. I'm sure that's going to be my next move. Yes, am I right? Oh boy. 2 new moves. 50%. I won 60 points. Not great. But better than nothing, as they say. I hope that was an immediate life and not an unholy life. Well, we've had a wonderful stream today. I appreciate you so much for being here. We talked about name, image, and likeness, and the farce that has become in college sports. We know it's only going to get worse. The super rich schools with these super rich boosters are going to shred the rest of the competition. And I don't know a way out of it. Because legislatures are supposed to be controlling this name and likeness thing through state laws. But no state that has a good football team is going to tolerate not being competitive in paying students to come and play for them so they can sell their name, image, and likeness. We talked about Peter Brook and the empty space. We talked about how the lack of snow is creating drought in the west and southwest. We talked about holiday decorations, watched some beautiful videos from Washington Square Park. Our friend Dora provided some wonderful images and inspirations for us. And we announced that Jana's new show, Saturday and Sunday, has a new name, Jana Sweeney, Ask a Deaf Person. So if you have a curiosity about what it is to be deaf, or a question about hearing aids, or cochlear implants, or education for the disabled, ask her. She's the new expert on the block. If you have questions about American Sign Language, you can ask that too. Thank you, Dora. Great. Video on demand is available if you're a subscriber to this Boles.tv channel, and we would love you to be. It supports us in every way. But if you just like watching the live stream and having the advertising, that's great too. But if you want to go ad-free and have access to our video on demand library, then you need to subscribe. Go to Boles.tv, which will take you to our Twitch channel, Boles TV, and you can click on the purple subscribe button. And you're in! So if you have any thoughts you'd like me to talk about in this live stream, any ideas for coverage or contemplation, find me on Twitter at David Boles, on Facebook, Boles, Instagram, Boles Books, and now via email, David at Boles.tv. Thank you so much for being here today. I will see you tomorrow.